This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And I'm your host, Dave Jewett, and we are finally heading to the lands of Gallia as we explore the weapons of Valkyria Chronicles.
Now this feels like someone has taken a gas axe or a blowtorch or something to a Sturmgewehr. And I spotted the rifle grenade on the end. I didn't know if it was functional. It clearly is. Blam indeed, my friends. Blam indeed. I always find idle animations weird in turn-based. People don't just move in place like that. Well, unless they really need the toilet or something.
Firstly, I want to say thank you to everyone who has supported us so far by watching our content and subscribing, and for helping us hit this 100,000 subscriber milestone. Valkyria Chronicles is a game that has been requested a lot over the years, so we wanted to make this 100,000 subscriber bonus episode a little more special. So what you're about to watch is one of our extended edition episodes. Usually these longer, deeper episodes are Patreon exclusives, but we wanted to share the entire thing with you guys as a thank you for helping us reach 100,000 subscribers. And this is just the first milestone of many. We have loads more cool projects in the works that we can't wait to share with you guys. But for now, from myself, Adam and Chris, the entire EXP team, thank you for supporting us. And now we will throw it over to Jonathan.
Hostilities began in the east when the Empire aggressively crossed their western border. The Atlantic Federation responded, and the Second European War was on.
So right, the context of this episode, it's a bonus episode.
Do go on.
It's a 100k subscriber celebration because this has been requested for years, and it was
by the same person.
By many people, actually, on and off. And
no, you're right. I have seen that.
It was one that I'd started to investigate in the before times, shall we say. As we've hit this milestone, we thought, what better time to both do this episode and explore the world of anime video games. All you need to know going into it is this is basically anime World War II.
I must admit, the map is making my brain twitch already. Why is the world different?
It's not based in our world. It's heavily inspired. It's a fictional universe that's been inspired.
Is that why Liège is in Turkey or whatever that was?
I believe the main faction you play as is based on Belgium.
Well done, Belgium. You finally got first billing in a video game. Why do they have lances? Like jousting lances? Ah, they're rocket launchers. Okay.
Anti-tank rocket lancers. We'll see more of those in detail later.
That's okay. I'll hold my tongue on that then for now.
Now, some of the weapons and at least uniforms have like a medieval inspiration to them as well. Hence the lances and armored guys shooting those. It's got a cool aesthetic. And the more research I did about the game, because I haven't played this since it released. The more research I did, the more weird parallels that I started to find.
I like the way some place names are just the same. Like Liège and Ostend are in there. Maybe more detail than you might think, given that it's sort of cel-shaded anime inspired. We've got a magazine catch behind the magazine, I noticed. Yeah, not a huge amount to work with here, but it's definitely feeling a bit German. It's not this, but it's not a million miles away. This is a K43, the shorter version of the G43. Silhouette-wise, it's there, and the strengthening grooves on the magazine catch behind it. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a mishmash. There's some G43 or K43 in there, but in particular where the rear sight is just in front of the breech, put it that way. The strengthening grooves on the magazine, the general plan form, the sling loop in the butt feels quite German, G43 in particular. But overall, I don't know, the receiver looks more round in section than that. And the feature on the side almost looks Mosin, like there's a feels like there's a hint of Mosin Nagant in there, which is obviously a totally different design. Yeah, bamboozling me slightly. So they've gone, it's a plausible, given the limitations of the art style, well, not a limitation really, but they've made it look very plausible, like it could work, except the location of the magazine relative to the bolt is a bit weird. I like the comic book style rat-a-tat or whatever that's coming up when he fires.
Well, as I understand it, the game is portrayed from the point of view of a reporter. So this is a book written by someone that's a recount of all of the events of this war, and you're playing through those events but reading the book. So everything's got this very, like, it looks like drawn on with, you know, coloured pencils and stuff. That's what the main aesthetic is.
Yeah, so there's sort of the illustrations come to life, I suppose, but then the fact that they have speech bubbles for the guns is more comic book, and we don't write comic books as history, do we, really? Yeah, so it's not too far off, but the way you have a feed device, in this case a detachable box magazine here, and you have the bolt above it, and you'll notice that the bolt stops here, this part of it does. It looks okay, it's just that the magazine is positioned too far forward. If you think about it, the bolt has to come back. I don't think they're animated on these, could check, but I don't think they are. The bolt has to come back further than that. I won't take it all the way back because it will lock on the magazine. Then come forward and push the round out of the magazine, up into the chamber, and close behind it. That can't really happen here because the bolt is stopping back here. So it would push the round slightly forward and stop, and there wouldn't be a round in the chamber. I know it's got a bit of a fool's errand trying to analyse this stuff, but hey, it's kind of what I'm here for. Aesthetically, it sort of works because you have the gap between the trigger guard and the back of the magazine, so it looks plausibly, 1930s self-loading rifle, but they haven't accounted for how the rounds are fed into the chamber. Not the best shooting position there. So this character is firing the rifle from the arm rather than into the shoulder. Reloads are kind of fudged, so we have a sort of make ready where we cock the weapon, or we mime it certainly, and then when it fires, we fire our capacity, 5 rounds in this case, I think. And they have reflected a short magazine on that design, but then there's just kind of a hand-waved reload, which is fine. All right, so some upgrades or variants.
Yeah, you upgrade the weapons as you progress through the campaign and gain resources and experience. But interestingly, all the upgrades they're grounded in the universe by these little paragraphs that go alongside them. Like the Gallian X, noting that, it says the rounds unfortunately deliver a substantial shock to the entire gun body when fired, requiring reinforcement not just to the barrel, but the entire gun. And as a result, the Gallian X's gun stock was crafted from a different wood.
A different wood? Interesting. Yeah, I mean, some woods are stronger than others for use on a firearm, but that's why we use those first. We don't deliberately put balsa wood stocks on rifles and then, we're going to go high pressure round. Let's put some real wood on this time. If there's a historical parallel to that, it is experiments with different woods due to shortage or anticipating having to make a ton of something. So the French did this with the 1777 musket. We have some of those in the collection. They tried oak and I think maple and a couple of other woods. And then the Brits did the same with the number 4 to try to diversify wood supply. Partly why you ended up with beech stocks being used on number 4s as well as the standard walnut. But yeah, you want to go with the strongest wood you can. The wood represented here looks sort of AK or SKS inspired, laminated, or at least that's what the patterns on there would seem to indicate. But I'm definitely reading too much into that. There isn't really the detail there they're just trying to tell you that this is wood with that, with the swirls that are in the stock. As to the reinforcement of the barrel, yeah, you definitely want to do that. We've seen that with pretty much any serious machine gun you can think of has a heavier barrel. The Knight's Armament KS-1 has a very heavy barrel to try to cope with high volumes of fire out of it. The SIG XM7 from the Next Generation Squad Weapon Program is designed from the ground up to be extremely pressure bearing because it uses very high pressure rounds. So yes, if you did upgrade if you rechambered your fleet of rifles or some of them into a new high pressure cartridge, you'd have to look at certainly the metallurgy, if not physically beefing up the barrel as well. There's another parallel here with the British 276 rifle, the Patton 1913, where the metallurgy wasn't really there yet, and they didn't want to add a ton of weight with a automatic rifle / machine gun barrel on the thing, and that was never really solved, and that ended up getting chambered in the good old 303 and as the model 1917 in the good old 30-06. So even though this is total fantasy, really, and we're just trying to give the player some variety and something to work with, maybe they'd read something about one of these things I've mentioned or something else, or maybe that's total coincidence. But the idea that ammunition can be more powerful, I think, is a better way to approach game design with guns than this identical looking rifle is somehow just more powerful, or even this is the M4 is this level of stopping power, and this almost identical AR-15 is way more powerful because we say it is. That's a little bit lazy. It's nice to have some changes that feel plausible, even if they're implemented in a way that's total fantasy or sci-fi.
It's as you go through these upgrades when you start to see, they become like mashups. You start to see elements from different guns glued together to make this in-game rifle. And they do start to get quite interesting. I want to mention at this stage, these views that you're seeing, these are not available in the game. To get some of these shots, I had to learn some very basic Blender to extract the models from the game and then preview them like this. There are a lot of models, so I want to shout out Wargate Director from our Discord and my friend Jason, who helped me animate all of these stuff. Links to all their work will be in the description below. Wargate does some really cool Blender modeling. Jason does some really amazing animations. He voiced the hell out of a Are We the Baddies skit, pretending to be a stormtrooper, a Star Wars stormtrooper.
So what you're saying is we're complicit in the upholding of a corrupt government.
Yes.
They do great stuff, and they were immensely helpful at getting some of these shots of the weapons because, as we've seen already, they are super valuable to showcase the weapons of Valkyria Chronicles.
Yes. Well done, guys. Thank you very much. So the one I happen to be looking at the moment, we've got an extended magazine, weird blue stripe painted on it, fine flavour, and a reinforced sort of ribbed barrel, some almost kind of Gatling gun looking reinforced rings down the front, or maybe referencing the Maxim, and then a sort of semi-jacket over the top, which feels like all of this together feels like it's trying to reference, well, I guess two different cooling systems at the same time, a ribbed barrel and a water jacket, but I don't think it's meant to be a water jacket. It's just a stylistic thing that also says this is big and bulky and it can deal with high pressure and heat and stuff. Problem there is that we've got this very huge front sight, or maybe that's the protector, but in any case, that no longer lines up with the rear sight. So I happen to have also picked up a Tokarev because I think there are elements of other designs in these rifles. But so it has the game models quite nicely these adjustable tangent style rear sights. Obviously they don't come into gameplay or anything, but the thing with rear sights is they've got to line up with your front sight, and if you put this gubbins on the front, it's not going to do that. Yeah, I don't know, it's funny, some of this stuff kind of makes me think it's based on something, but then I can't really identify much that's real. They look very sort of diesel punk industrial. They're consistent, it's not like they've stuck a sort of Cthulhu tentacle monster on the front of it or anything. Yeah, we've got something that looks a bit like a gas system on the bottom, pressed reinforced sheet metal, ventilated, what looks like it might be more different sheet metal on the top, a sort of a bipod on the bottom. Definitely sort of, they've got the vibe of sort of 1890 to 1940, that period of weapons design. Oh, okay, that one's a bit less plausible feeling with the big plates on the side. Not sure what's going on there. The painted stocks, I think, are cool, actually, because we do occasionally run into painted up guns in history, actually more so in the present. The mountain regions of Pakistan, for example, guys like to decorate their rifles with coloured tape and sometimes paint, I think. Typically not a good idea because the paint will just flake off. Of course, the practical aspect of that is camouflage. People have been camming up their rifles for a few decades, and it's very common now to have them sort of rattle can sprayed. This isn't doing that. This is doing more kind of, I'm personalizing my weapon. That does look quite hefty. for such a small person. I'm guessing the bipods are not functional in this one.
No, they're just a cosmetic upgrade to show you that you're a higher tier of weapon.
Very strange grip on that one there. He's just got his hand kind of sitting there. And I spotted the rifle grenade on the end. I didn't know if it was functional. It clearly is. At a very high angle. Blam indeed, my friends. Blam indeed.
I think the model of the rifle grenade is just a hand grenade, but like bolted to the bottom of the gun.
Oh, is it? Oh, is this what the hand grenades look like in the game?
Yeah, pretty much.
Because they don't look totally implausible for... Well, they sort of do in that they're not launched off the muzzle. They're launched from under the barrel. There are a few systems where they're mounted under barrel, but they're not 203s or whatever. But I can't think of many. There's that raw launcher, the giant ball-shaped thing that the Americans came up with, sits under the barrel like this. Because the whole point there is just using a propellant cartridge, like a blank on steroids, to pump the thing off the end of the gun. Can't do that if it's mounted underneath. That's why they came up with this rocket assault weapon. Yes, that's right, they called it an assault weapon. Don't shoot in the messenger. Because it had its own self-contained propellant to launch off the bottom of the weapon, which clearly is how these work. I do quite like the idea of what if we didn't adopt khaki and we carried on wearing blue and red and whatever else, and also, but we still brought some body armor back into the mix. It's kind of what you get here, albeit there's no armor in the places where you need it. There's no, in the First World War, they brought back body armor and helmets. This guy is wearing no sort of cuirass that I can discern, and no helmet. He's just got shoulder armor, elbow armor, and hip armor. Because as we all know, shot to the hip is, don't get me wrong, it is a pretty bad place to get shot. But if you've only got a certain amount of steel, don't put it on your hips.
Body armor in places where you don't actually need it, and no body armor on places where you do need it seems to be sort of an established thing in anime. Not limited to anime World War II, it seems.
I think you're probably right. It's fashion, really, isn't it? Armor as fashion. Anyway, I'm out of my wheelhouse, so...
The wheelhouse is in a separate postcode of this video.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying this lengthier extended episode, then you'll be pleased to know there are loads more over on our Patreon. Patrons also get episodes 1 week early, they get access to our weekly podcast respec, our monthly production streams, our fantastic Discord, and are even able to submit clips for our community episodes. One of those coming up very soon. Links to our Patreon can be found in the description below. Each patron directly supports this channel, helps keep the project alive, helps us do more cool stuff, and make cool content. But whether you follow along on Patreon, subscribe to us here on YouTube, thank you for watching, liking the video, subscribing, commenting, all of that good stuff. And now, I'll get back to the video.
Please head for the objective.
Now this thing... This feels like someone has taken a gas axe or a blowtorch or something to a Sturmgewehr. I don't know if the actual stamping patterns are a lift from the real gun. I don't think they are. You be the judge, but I don't think they've taken any... It's not like they've digitized a photo of a Sturmgewehr and taken, right, we'll cut these bits off, we'll keep these bits on. They haven't done that. They've just designed something from scratch. But it really does, it does evoke the look of this thing, I think. Critically, I think critically, they've done away with the fairly iconic curved 30-round magazine, and they've given it something more like this. Which is a test rig magazine for a prototype that we have. And that makes it look a bit more like the game already. It doesn't have the stacking hook. We could unscrew that if we wanted to. I'm not going to carry on converting this into the game gun, but clear inspiration there, I think. Maybe also some of the last-ditch designs, the VG rifle. Comparing
the stamp pattern to the in-game model just above the trigger to the STG you just held up, it is very similar, I think. It would be fair to say that the animators at least had images of the STG and were definitely evoking that.
And why would you slavishly represent the exact thing? Unless you were actually lifting that piece of the image and digitizing it as a texture. You wouldn't bother to replicate it. But we know what they're doing.
One of the things to note about these in-book views as well is you can actually see things like the length of the weapon, barrel length, and the caliber.
Oh, which was for this one? Sorry?
7.62.
Oh, okay. There you go. That's not quite right, is it? But
one interesting thing, because this is an Imperial weapon, and your faction is the Gallian faction, so it's an enemy weapon, enemy captured weapon. And in the HUD, it has a little G in the bottom, which is... I looked up that denotation. In World War II, the German military, when capturing weapons or using captured weapons or documenting captured weapons, they denoted it with the country that it was captured from. So a Lee Enfield would be E. Whereas I think they've done an inverse of this. It's the Gallians are using it, so it's denoted with a G.
interesting. Well spotted. I didn't think of that. All right, he's got some in there.
Not just a hat rack, my friend.
Not just a hat rack. Very good. Yeah, so am I looking here at the... Yes, I think I am. The modified or like variant versions of them. It really does... you lose all sense that it's an STG when they do that, I have to say. It's in large part the... it's not just the... It's the grooved, stamped looking receiver bit. Maybe the short mag as well. And then they've almost copied, not quite, the sheet metal handguard of the MP44. And once you lose that with a weird front end, it stops looking like the thing it's based on. I did also spot the... Yeah, so you can see, you've got the longitudinal grooves. You've got I think it's even the same number of holes. You've got these cooling holes on the side, 1, 2, 3, 4 in rows. In reality, they go around the bottom as well. So 4 rows of cooling holes. But again, enough visual clues to make you go, oh, that's like that thing I've seen. And then what looks like sort of barrel bands at the front is reminiscent of the gas block up here on the MP/STG as well. Front sight looks a bit more MP5, well, G3, than it does STG/Kar 98, because that front sight arrangement is very similar. Obviously not on a huge tower on the Kar 98. Now this does of course have a shotgun style semi-pistol grip stock rather than a lower receiver with a pistol grip. That's where it diverges most strongly.
The other rabbit hole I went down when looking up this weapon was the prototype Gustloff 206 rifle. I think because of the grip and the sort of similar stamped pattern, but on a longer rifle, adds to sort of that aesthetic.
What's the date of this game, remind me?
In-game or when it released?
When it released, sorry. 2008
on the PS3.
That is pre-Forgotten Weapons, therefore I'm going to say it is not based on the Gustloff. Because nobody knew about that thing outside of a handful of people like me, and I didn't know about it then either. So
when I looked it up, that was the first video that popped up. Ian's Forgotten Weapons video.
It's we don't have one. They're super rare, so it's almost the only thing you're going to find on that. There are books that give a bit of information on that, but I don't think there's a huge amount on that one. But I think what you're seeing there is, the sort of design lineage of the Sturmgewehr and the Gustloff happening around the same sort of time. And then they have, by sort of happy accident, redesigned a Sturmgewehr that ends up looking like the Gustloff. Would be my guess. It looks very front heavy there, especially with that grenade hanging off the end. I actually quite like the animation pose, because they're sort of chicken winging more like they would have in period. He's not doing this kind of, well, I suppose 2008 is, the Magpul disease had not hit fiction just yet. So they're not trying to have everyone run around like a modern tactical dude.
Stop C-clamping your rifles in my World War II game.
Exactly. And we have no trigger discipline, which is also correct. Broadly speaking. The worst.
Jonathan means period correct, not actually.
Oh God. Oh no. Thanks, Dave. This is the sort of thing I need to be more aware of. Yes, to be clear, in period, most people put their fingers on the trigger, or in the trigger guard, I should say. There was already, I think I found a movement by sort of 1910-ish written, I'm sure people were saying this before, don't put your finger on the trigger. But most people carried on doing it until Vietnam era, I would say.
What is that tank? Take this!
Now this thing's very cool. I like this.
This is the MAGS series of submachine guns.
MAGS. So, yeah, I don't know. I weirdly quite like a bit of wood on the submachine guns. Now, funnily enough, the stock is borrowed from the stock and the low receiver trigger group pistol grip feels like it's what was nicked from the previous gun and appears here. However, there's another possible inspiration, but I don't know if they would have known about this, with the MP40 based Spanish Star submachine gun, which really does look like a parallel universe diesel punk MP40. They've gone with wood. Actually, the grips are plastic, not wood, by the way. But the lower receiver, or outer lower receiver, like on the MP40, on that it's a phenolic plastic, and on this it's just a carved piece of wood. Cheaper at the time to go that way, and it radically changes the look. Now, to be fair, almost every detail of this is different to an MP40. It's MP40 inspired. It is not a copy. Certainly is reminiscent of this thing. Not so much in the front though. The front end looks more, I don't know, like a Suomi or something. Doesn't have the big sight tower of the what I can see here. I think they sort of double dipped on the STG for this and the last gun, taken design elements and split them out into two separate guns. And I think this is a coincidence, but it's a good excuse to show you it. Maybe we'll dive into this one on our channel at some point. I think we probably will. You see, there's another element, two more design elements. The front sight tower is taken from the Sturmgewehr, and the stacking hook is also taken from the Sturmgewehr. The rear sight, the part of the receiver that sticks up to house the rear sight, that is also taken from the Sturmgewehr. So this really is just as much STG as the last gun, just in a different way. Oh yeah, there we go, with a full-on water jacket, complete with asbestos corset.
Yeah, some of the variants seem to have like MP18 barrel shroud. Others, like you say, the water jacket.
So that's looking a bit G3-ish towards the end there. Oh, you see, for this one, with the sort of water jacket front end, they've increased the height of the rear sight base to line up with the front sight. So that one actually works, albeit it looks a bit silly.
And this is the underslung option for the SMGs.
What are we underslinging?
Flamethrower.
I should have known. I misread that as a foregrip, funnily enough, but it's actually a tiny fuel tank. Oh, okay, so that's the... you have done a good job of extracting these so I can actually make out what the heck's going on with them. Bit of a perforated heat shield there, and then additional shields at the side. I guess because you've got to try and potentially put your hand on them. Oh, that one makes a bit less sense, I think. There's a bit of sort of busy work. Yeah, this happens with almost every flame weapon, because people don't really grasp them to the extent that they do firearms. And they just go, oh, put a pipe there, or put a can there. I understand that. The real things are quite boring, really, except for the ones that are mocked up like rifles. They don't look really as exciting as the movie ones tend to. Yeah, I don't think I want to be underslinging a flamethrower off a water-cooled automatic rifle. But...
Why did my water jacket blow up?
I wasn't even thinking of the heat. I was thinking of the weight, but yeah, not ideal. I mean, how much flame are you going to get out of that little canister?
Here I come!
There's been some good sort of aiming going on. Then there's been some kind of random firing from down here. Firing from the hip was a real thing. We've talked about that before. With such a big, heavy gun, obviously, you would not be able to do very much firing from the shoulder, so... Yeah, the sound is,
Here I come! Mwah.
Feels appropriate for the game, but if this was something more kind of graphically intense, I'd probably be saying that the reports of the guns are very weak sounding.
These higher tier of SMGs, I recognize that gunshot sound from somewhere. It must be in like a gunshot library or something that multiple games have used, because for the life of me I can't think of what it could be, but I definitely recognize it.
If anyone in the comments knows what that rat-a-tat-a-tat sound is from or was used in, put us out of our misery. I suppose the random cocking that they're doing at the end of a turn is essentially reloading. It's the same thing they do.
It's meant to imply a reload because you can't shoot more than once on a turn. So you're ending your turn, so you're reloading for the next one.
I always find idle animations weird in turn-based or similar things. Bit weird. People don't just kind of move in place like that. Well, unless they really need the toilet or something. Oh, okay.
It's the Imperial faction submachine guns, which again, wear their inspirations quite clearly.
Yeah, well, I don't know. This feels like yet another riff on the STG to me. Very different shape.
Maybe I was reading MP40 just because it's a submachine gun. I was doing a bit of the heavy lifting in that regard.
Well, I mean, it's not MP40, I suppose, but this is very boxy. It reminds me of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, various guns where they just built a shell around them to look like riveted steel. It's almost Uzi-like, actually, the receiver. Obviously, nothing else is very reminiscent of that. Or maybe... And there's a big oval dent either side that reminds me of the AKM magazine indent. I don't mean this in a critical way, but it almost looks like someone's asked an AI model to spit out a gun, reminiscent of a few things, but not really like any of them. So how does this work then? Because it's not turn-based per se, is it?
It is turn-based in the way that like you have a bunch of action points, and each unit is a certain amount of action points. You can move that unit to a certain position and then fire from that position. But as you're navigating around, if you get into the line of sight of an enemy rifleman or something, they can shoot you. But each turn you move one of your troops, try and take out an enemy or capture a base. And the thing is with the submachine guns, you have to be very close to be effective.
Yeah, that's what it looked like, just where we had a burst of fire that didn't really seem to do anything.
That circle you see on the HUD is basically an approximation of where your bullets could go. So the closer you are, the tighter to the target that circle gets. Interesting
way of doing it, actually. So instead of giving you a percentage hit chance, it gives you a sort of visual indication, or a graphical indication, I suppose.
In this extra mode, you can play as the Imperial faction, and it's interesting how much the weapon ties into the user's aesthetic and the uniform. It feels like an Imperial weapon. It more tightly matches with like their armor. So when you're using it as the Gallian, it does stand out a bit more. So there's at least, some consideration in the design language between the factions using it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's consistency there. So where this does, of course, give MP40 is the stock design. You've even got the actual pivot point, the way that's designed. There's a little nod there to how that's actually done on the real thing. Even that, though, is a different shape and is the wrong way up. The butt bit of it is the wrong way up. Yeah, so I think that what I thought took to be an oval feature on the side is more meant to look like a sort of, I don't know, I was going to say an ejection port, but it already has a fake ejection port on it. Now, the sniper rifle. Oh, and by the way, this bolt handle is the same as on the semi-automatic rifle earlier. Very pointy, dangerously pointy, I would say. So this really does look a lot. This looks like a mashup of a Kar 98 with a Mosin Nagant, maybe even with a Lee Enfield, possibly even an Arasaka with that rounded rear, if I can say that.
It fires 7.92, which is, that was a pretty common round in World War II as well.
Yeah, that and the buttstock design lean it toward German. Oh, okay. So the bit that made me think Mosin, or partly, which is the magazine on the Mosin, is actually just a part of a very large trigger guard on this thing. And then you have a magazine, detachable type magazine, except it doesn't get detached in the game. In front of that, so yeah, kind of generic bolt action rifle, really. Yeah, curious. The XX with that extending the barrel, a much steadier bullet trajectory.
One of the ways the game implements accuracy into the weapons. So if you upgrade a weapon to have higher accuracy or down that tree, the common thing is barrel is longer.
So the Brondel X has a very curious design with a sort of half shield thing around the barrel, purpose of which is unclear. It then has a very large chambered muzzle brake at the end, which would normally imply recoil control, so a more powerful round. This does say it's altered to fire specialty rounds, but it says alterations to the Brondel's percussion enabled this model to fire specialty rounds. Brondel's percussion. Unclear what's meant by that. Maybe that's a translation issue. Lightened stock and pared down barrel. That's kind of contradictory. So if it's been modified to fire specialty rounds and it has a break, that implies a heavier barrel. But it does seem like it has a slimmer barrel, but then this weird kind of shroud around the barrel, not making a huge amount of sense. And lightened stock, well, not lightened by much. It's got a chunk missing from the middle. That's about it.
This family of rifles continues to get upgraded into anti-tank rifles. So I think they've started with some of the design cues, like the muzzle brake, that makes people think an anti-tank or an anti-materiel weapon. But it's only until the end of that tree where they actually have anti-tank, anti-materiel functionality. I think they've just got the design cues for that type of weapon in early.
Yeah. Weird.
Considering how far we are into the episode, and that's the first time you've really gone, weird. It's it's surprising.
Oh, it's all quite weird.
Also, I forgot to mention when we were looking at the book view, despite there being some interesting historical correlations and inspirations from real-world firearms, they always call a magazine a clip.
I did notice that. Mind you, since we never see the thing reloaded, for all we know, they are all being loaded with clips.
Oh, dang. You're right. we can't technically prove them wrong.
No. I might have mentioned this before, but when I was looking at some Vietnam-related stuff fairly recently, there was a unit of US Army, I forget which unit, preparing to go out on a mission, and they had M14s which had the clip guide in the top, and I always took that to be an emergency thing. You know, if you haven't got spare magazines, you would leave the empty one on and you would load from clips, but they actually are loading their weapons in the first instance using clips with the magazine fixed in place, and then presumably, definitely, they have loaded magazines on them.
It's got a little suppressed pew, but no suppressor. In fact, it's got a big fat muzzle brake on it.
It's got a loudener on it, not a silencer. Yeah, don't know where the pew comes in. And there's that weird barrel shroud thing that they're so fond of. They love extra weight and bulk for no reason. Closest thing I can think of there is some of the late 19th century designs, like the Lebel, for example. They have a sheet metal shroud around the barrel to sort of protect it. They're worried about them getting bent, I think, but it just caused problems for maintenance and added a bit of weight. That's almost like just a bit of heraldry, where you've got like colours wrapped around the gun. That looks more practical, but what's it doing? It's like an upper handguard that doesn't do anything. This feels more like clothes for guns. We're just playing dress up with our firearms. Not that people don't do that.
So these are the anti-tank ones, which do give you an option to obviously combat tanks, but you usually just take your anti-tank troops. It allows you to be a bit more flexible though, I suppose.
This thing looks like the scope is positioned behind the barrel shroud.
Is the NTW20 that has the sort of handle above the weapon like that as well? I guess it's another design cue that might say to people, heavier weapon, anti-material, anti-tank, visual implication of what the weapon can do.
It doesn't feel radically different from the other thing with a muzzle brake to me.
Gameplay-wise, they act pretty much the same. It's just what it does against a tank that changes. Right. Like I shot that light tank in the radiator and it blew up. The same gun wouldn't have done that. The same gun, but not the anti-tank version, wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I can't say I'm a fan of just labeling, like it works because it is. Because we say it's anti-tank, it blows tanks up. That's kind of, isn't that like orc logic?
It is. It 100% is. The amount of
and yes,
Warhammer I've accidentally just... the amount of Warhammer information I've imparted on you over the years that you've absorbed via osmosis is brilliant.
Yeah, a lot of it sticks. So the scope you can see through the shroud. It's not the shroud isn't blocking the scope, so that works at least. But what is the shroud doing apart from shrouding the barrel? It's just strange because normally games take the reality of an anti-tank rifle is a big, heavy thing for a very high pressure, high velocity round to hopefully put a hole in an armoured vehicle. Normally that means they look very different. They're totally different things. So this is very unusual in going for, this is basically the same rifle, but it's capable of killing tanks. The nearest we get to that in history is, the very beginning of anti-tank rifles, where they literally are just a Mauser Gewehr 98 or It's the one that comes to mind because the Germans did develop the K bullet, armor-piercing K bullet. So you put the same caliber ammunition in, but it has an armored core, a hardened core, and that will go through 14 millimeters of boilerplate steel, which is what the British tanks at the time had. But then it's like about a fortnight later, in historical terms, that does nothing to an armored vehicle, and we get the Tigavir M1918, which is basically the same design, but scaled up to enormous proportions. I'm not getting that from this. Is this just the sniper version of what we saw earlier?
This is the Imperial's sniper rifle.
Reminiscent of the one of the sniper Kar 98s with the scope mounted ahead of the action like that.
The SG is a common or still used German designation for a marksman's weapon or a sniper rifle, right?
Yeah, certainly HK used that. Well, in fact, yeah, Scharfschützengewehr, I think, top of my head.
A shooter's rifle?
Sharpshooter's rifle. So a sort of early, maybe the Germans were the first to do it, post-war, an early German equivalent of in English, in British English, it's the same thing, sharpshooter. And we don't use it so much later. Designated marksman rifle is where I'm going. So it is more, although I think in context, a sharpshooter is interchangeable with a sniper. So I think I'm reading too much into that. Scharfschützen is a term that exists, and then by the time HK are involved, possibly earlier, thinking about it, SG becomes an abbreviation for essentially a type of sniper rifle. Or a variant, in the case of the G3, a variant of it. That is a sniper rifle. Yeah, these are fun. They're leaning a little bit toward looking like a machine gun, maybe. Again, I don't know if that's deliberate or not, because it's not like they've slapped the front end of an MG42 onto this thing. It's more like reinforced wooden stock. The real thing would be super heavy, by the way. I don't think you need me to tell you that. The sort of rest poses with the weapons are a little curious. They sort of lean the rifle back against the shoulder in the crouch position. I'm sure some soldiers have done that, but it's not typical, I wouldn't have said. At the same time, they feel like they have some presence in the world. You know, they have weight, they have bulk. The character has to accommodate them as they move around. They're not just, it's not like the old video game thing of bolt-action rifle running full pelt Tom Cruise style, and I'm holding the bolt-action rifle by the grip like it's nothing. We've moved away from that, thankfully. Even by 2008, I think.
Now feel the power of the Valkyria.
Whoa, hang on a minute. What did I miss? She shot one tank and then several others exploded out of nowhere. This is very anime. Giant kind of keyblade lance that shoots energy blasts.
Yeah, when it comes to the Valkyrs, when it comes to
Valkyrias, I think you'll find.
when it comes to those folks, that's when the real sort of magic anime nature really comes through. The rest of it is, as I said, very anime World War II. And this is the most sort of out there element of this franchise.
The spiral fluting on her lance weapon is curious. So that's quite a lot of effort to design and have that in the game. Quite striking looking. I don't think we have any spirally fluted historic firearms, unfortunately, but we do have some very deeply engraved outer barrels, 16th century, where a tremendous amount of effort was put into the outside of the weapon for basically just aesthetic purposes. Like if you wanted it lighter, you just get rid of all that metal. You don't leave some of it there in a decorative style. But I have seen spirally fluted gun barrels, and I guess it's reminiscent of corkscrew knives, but they're a later invention. The things that people like to say are illegal. Oh, there's some even more spiky bits there. These seem to be all-purpose sword, lance, lightsaber, energy weapons that do everything. This idea of fighting on foot with a lance and a shield, like a jousting lance with a shield that the ordinary troops do as well, is really quite strange.
Valkyria!
We meet again. It looks like fate is toying with us.
This is a treat, isn't it? A specialty gun crafted by an arsenal under the Emperor's direct command and in conjunction with ZM Kar if you prefer. It marries the accuracy of a sniper rifle with the power of a heavy machine gun. No, it doesn't. Not in our world. Its muzzle dampening system. I don't think I want a damp muzzle. And drum-shaped magazine.
But they say clip above.
It says clip size, so we've got them there. Incontrovertible proof. Together yield a fearsome rapid-fire performance. Yeah, so the accuracy of a sniper rifle with the power of a heavy machine gun. Well, I suppose you could say something like the Lati anti-tank rifle has the power of a heavy machine gun, but only for one or a series of slower fired shots, and has the accuracy of a sniper rifle. Maybe. That's not what this is, I don't think, but let's have a look at it. And it's 7.62, so, 7.62 is appropriate for a sniper rifle and for a First World War to Second World War-ish definition of a heavy machine gun, because heavy machine gun didn't come to mean 50 cal 12.7 or whatever until later on. I'm definitely reading too much into this. This is very MG34, isn't it? Very.
Very MG34. In fact, it's an MG34.
It's the close, I would say, which is a shame because I haven't got one to hand. It's the most gun-like gun of this game. It has nearly all of the features. The muzzle booster, the perforated cylindrical jacket, pistol grip's quite similar, the buttstock's similar, the drum box for the belt is there. She straight up just has a medieval-inspired take on an MG34. But she does wield it like a rifle. Well, more like a pistol, actually. It looks cool, though. Has a high rate of fire as well. The way she trails it behind her as she anime runs is amusing. She's holding it like she would a sword, in pop culture anyway. They do that with swords, don't they? I haven't seen it done with a gun before.
It's definitely the most powerful weapon in the game. You can only field one of them because it's supposed to be that character's weapon. You capture it from her. Okay,
and you can put a flamethrower on that as well. I'm surprised they have Ruhm.
Right, that's it. Episode over. I can't say much. I've delivered some right clangers on this series.
It's only going downhill from here, I'm afraid.
Don't overextend yourself.
Okay, anti-tank lance. 122 millimeters. Developed as a way to allow foot soldiers to combat tanks unassisted. Well, yes, we have that in our world. Anti-tank weapons for the use of one soldier. From hand-thrown grenades all the way up to shoulder-fired weapons, recoilless weapons, rocket launchers. This happens to be in the form of a cavalryman's lance for some reason. I quite like the idea that in the lore of this world they use the word lance for this purpose, because the original fighting version of the medieval lance is devastating, concentrating all that force onto the tip of a weapon like that. This is obviously not that. It's a rocket launcher, essentially. Problem there is, if it's a rocket launcher, where is the exhausting? And how is it not burning you? Oh, okay, so it's an acronym, sort of. That's the lowest effort acronym I've ever seen. It draws its name from its use as a lance-shaped anti-armor device. Lancer. And yet they call it a lance as well. Maybe that works, and I'm being unfair. I don't know. The warhead has been bugging me. So the warhead thing on the end reminds me of something, and I think it's a MIRV. I think it's a nuclear warhead submunition. I think is what I'm thinking of. Oh, okay. Reinforced warhead core, wing stabilizers, vastly reduced projectile drift, an issue that forced users to use them point blank. Point blank? That's more like the bomb lances from Fury Road and Furiosa.
Some of the literature in the in-game book makes it sound like they're used sort of like lunge mines the Japanese used, but they're projectile munitions.
Yeah. Yes, that's really strange. So which are they? Are they both, or some of them both?
I think in lore they can be used as lunge mines because the the characters that use them
Right.
are armored, but in game you fire them like an RPG.
I'd forgotten about the Japanese things, to be quite honest. My mind was firmly stuck in the wasteland. Yeah, they're interesting though. They're kind of their own thing, something I haven't seen before. Even if they ultimately work pretty much like an RPG.
It's cool that they've managed to create a weapon that ties the sort of medieval armor aesthetic into a weapon as well.
I think that's the primary motivation, isn't it? They want a weapon that... I mean, considering that though, there are surprisingly few massive swords, which would have been the other way to do it. Yeah, of course, this kind of weapon has been used by infantry soldiers historically, but this is very much based on the couch it under the arm, ram it into your opponent on a horse style of lance, such as you can see in the galleries here at the Royal Armouries, and in action for events where crazy people charge at each other on horseback. Lovely, talented, crazy people, by the way. I'm not sure where these wings are that they're talking about, because I don't see that the projectile has them when it launches, but I could be wrong. Real stabilization is achieved either by angled exhausts for rocket motors, or by fins, of course, or both sometimes. And you spin stabilize it like a bullet, but you do it with other means. Why does it have a bipod on it now? Why not, I suppose. If flamethrowers can have bipods, and actually, I've spoken too soon, because the Chinese variant of the RPG-7 has a bipod as well. So he's shoulder firing that one, and you can see that it does have an exhaust, sort of, arrangement at the back. And actually, to be fair, even when they're firing them under the arm, more like a lance, there is, plausibly enough, the back end is out under your arm, so it's not really a problem for back blast per se, which there would have to be really for this to work. Oh, hello! I've gone full Alan Partridge for that one. That looks like you've gone for a nice drink at the pub and you've got a big umbrella. So you don't get wet when it inevitably rains. And then the world's largest bipod.
These ones are meant to be anti-personnel because they have a grenade launcher arc to them rather than
everything's anti-personnel if you try hard enough.
In Valkyria Chronicles 4, jump ahead a few games, they have mortar systems that work like a suitcase. Carry them around and set them up. Maybe we'll look at one of those one day. Maybe we'll hit 1 million subscribers.
I hope nobody minds me laughing at this, but it is pretty silly. There's plenty of silly things I like.
That's the thing. It is a little silly, but at the same time, it is also quite interesting. It balances silly and interesting in equal measure.
I see that, and I've played a ton of turn-based, more so tactical than strategy. So anything where you get to take your time and think about what you're doing and has guns and different weapons in it, I'm all for that. It's just not a part of the gaming world I've touched upon previously. So you're getting more incredulousness than you would otherwise. If I'd never played Doom, I'd be reacting quite similarly, I suspect.
So the description of this one is an interesting one because this is one of the descriptions that shows that they've tried to tie it in to history, or at least tie it into their own history to make it feel more authentic. They name drop von Bismarck, leader in explosives research, and say that PL comes from the term Panzerlance. German tanks called Panzers. It's its own thing, but it does do some interesting stuff tying it back into our own history. And for that, gotta respect it.
They've given these things the same treatment as the guns in terms of variants and the detail. Normally, you're sort of rocket launcher, generic, whatever heavy type weapon in a game with the exception of things like Doom Eternal, you've just got that one and that's your lot. This, they've sort of developed it into a sort of weapons system or a family of weapons that's equivalent to guns. And actually, you look at something like the RPG-7, there's almost AK level variety there. Different countries making them, different features, different warheads, of course, as well, which is maybe not captured in this as much. But we have the anti-personnel, we have the anti-tank. I suppose in reality, the weapons tend to stay more static, albeit each country does its own take on it. And it's the warhead that changes over time. And there's a diversify into thermobaric and pure anti-personnel, different types of anti-tank, upgraded to account for modern types of armor, reactive armor, notably bar armor, and that radically changes the look of the projectile. They can't really do that on this because the projectile on the end, well, they sort of have for the infantry ones, but the anti-tank ones, they to keep the lines of a knight's lance, it has to look like pretty much a rocket, pretty much, or a re-entry vehicle, warhead type thing. And there's a pet pig. Now that's not as random as it might seem, because in both World Wars, units did take mascots of all sorts. I'm sure I've seen a pig at one point. Cats, goats, dogs, you name it.
Bear. Shout out to the
Bears.
Polish bear.
Wojciech, I believe his name was.
Carried artillery shells.
Wojtek, I think. Forgive me if I got that wrong. It's been a while.
Wasn't there a hero horse as well that served in the US Marines? Was it the Korean War? Carried recoilless rifle rounds?
I'm not sure I knew about that, but I remember the Imperial War Museum had a display some years ago of animals that had won the Dickin Medal in war, and there was a horse. I don't think they had a whole horse, but there was a horse in that.
Sergeant Reckless, that was its name.
Sergeant Reckless. Brilliant name. That was a bit of a roller coaster ride of craziness, but also a real sort of, I won't say grounded.
It's bizarre trying to just explain it, right? Yeah. It's so weirdly its own thing, but so also, tangibly connected to real world history. It's quite bizarre.
It's almost, I suppose, the closest thing to something that I've spent time on, and I haven't played the modern ones, is XCOM, which always had that stylized aesthetic and weapons that weren't quite real world weapons, but were close enough for the purposes of the game, almost like playing a turn-based comic book kind of thing. So this is no different than that. And the way, at least in that, I suppose, you start out with conventional weapons, you get alien ones, you research them, and you make them more crazy over time. This kind of hits you with the crazy up front. But it always has these fairly normal bullet-firing rifles as your standard weapon for people. So it's not, in the world of anime and manga and things, it's by no means crazy. Yeah, interesting to finally see it after all of those comments.
Thank you all for watching. We're so glad we've been able to bring you this extended episode. Honestly, we hit 100,000 subscribers much quicker than we ever expected. So again, from all of us here at EXP, thank you. Make sure to comment below what other games, movies, anime, or anything else in between you'd like to see on the show. Maybe leave some thoughts for our next milestone special, and of course, subscribe. As always, a huge shout out to all of our supporters over on Patreon for helping make this project and all of these videos happen. Links to support the Royal Armouries will also be in the description, so make sure to check those out. But until next episode, once more, thank you for watching, and we will see you real soon.